What is going on, everybody? This is Liam Murphy here today to break down one of the chess tournaments I played over the weekend. So let's get this out of the way. If you know me for fantasy football and you're not interested in a chess video, you do not need to watch this video. It's strictly about chess. If you don't know who I am, I used to be a chess teacher in New York City, played chess growing up in New Hampshire, took a break, and coached really strong teams when I lived in New York. I was an elementary school chess teacher, so chess was a required class in the school. And I played 2 chess tournaments over the weekend. Today's video is just going to be the Saturday quad I played, and tomorrow we'll go into the Swiss tournament where the police got called. So if you want to hear that drama, check out that video. I'll link it after this one once I make it. Before I jump into the chess games, I wanted to show where I am at as a chess player. So anyone who's curious, we can set a framework here. I'm going to be looking at the games on chess.com. First, let's pull up me. I'm going to show you my tournament history, my rating graph here. It's me, Liam Murphy. Roughly, little spoilers there, roughly like 1,800 right now. That's very low for me. I think I'm, at my peak as a chess player. Looks like I was, I don't know, mid 1900s, but really climbing. This was back in COVID. I lived in New York City. I would play at the Marshall Chess Club often, and I would do like an hour of tactics on the subway each day to work. And so just showing you my rating history graph. Basically, I was climbing. I was probably going to reach expert around 2000 USCF. And I realize a lot of people watching this probably just play online. And so, like 1800 USCF is closer to like 2000 online. This is my rating history graph. So this is my first tournament in 4th grade. I went 4-0. I was immediately 1,300 from then on in the 4th grade. In New Hampshire, there was a plus 1,000 section and under 1,000 section. So I played in the above 1,000 section with the high schoolers. You can see there was like, dip down to my lowest in 800, and then ended high school around the same rating, around 1,300. And then these green lines here are inactivity breaks. So I didn't play chess tournaments once I graduated high school until the end of college. Came back to chess and very quickly, in a span of a couple of years, went from around 1,200, 1,300 to 1,900. That's a really big jump for my age. To do that, a lot of people are probably around the 1,000 level. I attribute that to just being older, being able to study better. And then also, when I grew up playing chess, there weren't online chess websites. I didn't know to do tactics. I didn't have a coach, right? So just doing better things. And I personally, I'm around 2050 FIDE, which FIDE ratings, for those who don't know, are harder to get, A, and B, are slower time control. So like I'm generally a stronger, slower chess player than quick chess. Slow chess, I'm talking about like game 3 hour. Both sides have 3 hours versus both sides have 25 minutes. Both sides have 45 minutes. Those are the tournaments I played this weekend. And I think with a little bit of work, I could get to 2,000, 2,200. It would just take some work, And above that, I don't think I'd want to work that hard on my chess, being honest. So that is me. This is the St. Pete Quad tournament. Reviewing these games on chess.com. Of course, I used to work for chess.com, specifically Chess Kid. I'm a company man here. So these are quads. For those who don't know what a quad is, you get placed in 4-person groups based on your rating. The top 4 players go in the top quad, etc. down. I was in the second quad, so amongst the second highest rated group of players in St. Pete, Florida. Played 3 games. These were game 45. So let's jump into the first game. I'm playing as black, playing around an 1850 USCF. So he opens up with b4. This is an opening I've never encountered over the board before. It's called the Polish opening. And I responded with e5, a principled approach which allows my bishop to see the pawn here. This bishop's going to come to b2. Oftentimes you trade these pawns, which is a little bit weird because we're trading a center pawn for a non-center pawn. Um, but with b4, what they're hoping you play moves like knight c6, and then they get to get in b5, kicking your knight, winning the pawn for free, just being a nuisance. It's a pretty sharp opening, trying to attack, cause chaos. So we're going to play pretty solid here. There are all sorts of tricks. I've lost on blitz games online all the time to this, where I take you, and then I move my knight to the wrong square, and the bishop takes on g7, or even I just develop this knight attacking the bishop, and the bishop captures on g7, hitting your rook and winning it. So bishop b2, I took on e5, b4, and he played f4. Not a move I've ever seen before. I don't know how to turn off these question marks, by the way, on the chess.com analysis board. So you're going to know when a question mark means a mistake. The idea is that if I take the pawn, the bishop captures on g7 and my rook is stuck. So obviously I can't do that. There's a couple moves I could do. I chose d6, saying, okay, I'm going to give up that pawn, but you have this open f file that kind of weakens your king somewhat. You're not developing a piece by moving this pawn, so there's benefits for me. So and I'm up a pawn, so I'm okay giving the pawn back. He took my pawn, and I played knight f6. No more do I need to worry about this bishop takes g7 nonsense. Let's just get our knight out. We're developing our pieces, controlling the center. I like having the E and D files open. Allows me to put my rooks here pretty logically. And white has only developed one piece. So black's pretty happy with how the opening's going so far. White plays knight f3. I played bishop f5. The idea was that I want to sometimes put my knight on c7 and play the move c6, just kind of stopping this knight from jumping into here in the future. And I want the bishop out of the way here. It says it's a slight mistake. Obviously, it's not losing or anything. e3 hits the board. Kind of a passive move by white. Moving 2 squares controls more space. You're controlling d4 here. You are allowing your bishop to get out, so fine enough move. And also, what black has 6 pawns here. So does white. But black has only 2 pawn islands, as we call them, pawns that are connected, whereas white has 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And in general rule of thumb with that is less pawn islands is better because pawns work together, they defend themselves. I played knight d7. Again, sometimes my pawn wants to go to c6. My queen wants to come out on this diagonal. So that's why I'm keeping it flexible here, defending my knight, freeing up my queen to move. The bishop returns back to b2. So this gains a tempo. When I move my knight and I attack a piece, and he didn't want to give me the bishop, which it was defended, he's investing another turn into moving the bishop. I have 4 minor pieces developed. He only has 2. So black, this is a major win for black out of the opening. I played queen e7 over protecting my bishop. It's key to know your pieces that are undefended, such as my bishop on f5. I'm defending my bishop. I'm remaining flexible to castle. I can castle on the king side. I can castle on the queen side, depending on what I want to do. White plays bishop e2, setting up to castle on the king side. And I played knight e4. Just jumping into the space here. This knight's annoying. Moves like d3 to kick the knight out is a little bit white doesn't want to do that because it stops protecting the e3 pawn for the queen. And I'm putting on pressure on this piece that's pinned right now. This pawn can't move because the king would be in check. If the knight jumps here, it allows me to capture the knight. If the pawn takes, I can just retreat my bishop, and white is left with doubled pawns blocking in his bishop. If the knight goes here and I take and the bishop takes, and then white again has double isolated pawns, including this isolated pawn, so that would be a disaster. So just a piece that's gaining space. It's improving. I was okay if the bishop took on g7 here because I would play rook b8. The white bishop would retreat. Let's say it goes back to b2 or h6. And then I'm going to capture on g2. And now white can no longer castle. they're not having this pawn is a disaster for this diagonal. Getting in these checks here. This is just the white king might get checkmated soon here. I could castle long or queenside, put my rook on g8, and white is just not happy. Obviously, I can't go here right now because of the knight, but we can deal with that. So I was willing to do that. But he castled, and then I played knight d f6, which you can see it's saying this is a slight mistake, and I saw this in game, but or what I did see is that when he castles, the rook is lined up with my loose bishop, and when your piece can move, like say the knight moves to d4, and then what that's called is it's called a discovered attack because the rook discovers an attack on the bishop. Now, here, I didn't see any problems with it. Pretend my queen was on e6. Then it would be a big problem because the knight moves to d4, hitting my queen, so gaining a tempo, and the knight discovers an attack on the bishop along with the rook. So that would win my bishop. But here, if the knight moves, I just move my bishop. So I didn't see any problems with the discovery. A move I didn't look at, or a combination of moves I didn't see, the computer is saying this, is e5 was strong. The bishop protects the knight. Let's say I move my bishop to d6. White could play bishop e5. I can't play the move c6 because the white knight can capture, the pawn captures, the bishop captures, forking my king and rook. So you traded a knight and bishop, or you traded a knight for 2 pawns, plus you're getting my rook because the king would move, you would take my rook, and then you're probably going to trade and just win. So that would have been bad for me. So the move I have to play after bishop b5 is like king f8. And why is that a win for white? No, they didn't win any material. However, now I can't castle. And so this rook's a little awkward. Where my king goes is a little awkward. So that is something white could have done. I didn't see that. What they ended up doing is the move c4. You can see white just claims that's a massive blunder. Um, I under I roughly understand this move is that he wants to get his knight here and not have this pawn blocked anymore. He probably, if I castle queenside, he wants the ability to throw these pawns up the board and attack me. He's controlling the center, but ultimately it's a weird move because um, there's a hole in his position here left behind by this pawn no longer attacking here. And the move just doesn't do a lot. It's not developing pieces. So I castled queenside here, lining my rook up with the queen. A win for the rook and bad news for the queen. And white played knight d4, trying to shut down my vision here, discovering an attack on my bishop. I retreated my bishop to g6. He played a3 here, and I calculated a little bit capturing on d2 here, but wasn't quite the time. So I played bishop a5. Bishop a5 is nice because the only way to attack my bishop now is like queen a4 or knight b3, retreating the knight. Both are which no problem at all. And he plays queen c1, which you can see chess.com hits that with a blunder because can you find what move I did here? Kind of hinted at it earlier, but the move I did here to just be winning is knight takes d2. And let's see why. Because the queen can't capture, of course. The bishop is protecting it. The knight captured back, and now I took on d3 with check. Key to see that it is a check. White has 2 options to get out check. He can move the king. He can play rook f2. In this case, he played rook f2. And now my bishop captures on d2, hitting the queen, picking back up the knight that we gave away. We also won 2 pawns. At my level, up 1 pawn, up 2 pawns is usually enough to just win the game. I didn't, you had to see this move, and I'd be lying if I said I fully saw this move. But the queen captured on d2, which for a second my stomach dropped, but then I realized it was fine. Because the plan is after I capture back on queen 2, the white bishop discovers, or the white bishop hits us with a check, discovering an attack on our queen. Now, good news is he had to sacrifice his queen to do this. Also, his bishop's not protected. So I simply took his bishop. The rook took back. And at the end here, we have a position where it's tied in pieces. We both have 2 rooks. We both have a knight and bishop. However, black is up 2 pawns. Their pawns are also just better. This is a weak pawn. It's isolated. It has no friends to protect it. This is a pretty weak pawn by itself. My rook is awesome. My knight is annoying in his camp. My bishop's slicing down. This rook is going to come to the e file very clearly. My king has no problems about safety. So I had a couple moves to consider here. One move I considered was c5, simply moving the knight to f3 and trading, but I elected with f6 first. I was a little bit worried about bishop takes g7 lines, and it can get annoying. You need to be careful when you have opposite colored bishops, because oftentimes, even when you are winning, like up a pawn or two, sometimes it's not enough to win the game. So I wanted to just create a granite wall for this bishop to look back at. Creates a nice square for my knight to jump into and be protected. Nice outpost. And there's no rush in forcing this trade. Like, that's going to happen. He played rook e2, getting out of the pin, and I played rook he8. My bishop's also covering this rook. He played rook ae1. I traded, and he took back with the knight, which was really surprising to me. I thought taking back with the rook was like logical. This knight has some squares it likes to jump into from here, such as e6. It's annoying. B5, a little annoying. But he took with the knight, and notice the job my knight's doing around the king, keeping this king back on the back rank. And I simply played rook e8. This is just pinning the knight to the rook. The knight cannot move, or you would lose your rook. The only way for the king to protect the rook is to go to king f1, which would lose this pawn to check. Also, king f1 would run into bishop d3, pinning the knight to the king, allowing me to trade everything off and just have an avoiding endgame. And so he plays h3 here for that reason. And here I had to calculate. I can obviously move my knight. If I move my knight to the e file, it breaks the pin for this knight to move. If I move to h6, it's not the best square in the world. So I calculated for a while, and I played bishop d3, which the computer thinks is a mistake, but I think is practically a good move, because let's see what happens. He, of course, he captured my knight on g4, and I took his knight on e2 with my rook. And he can't play rook b1, protecting his bishop, which my rook is now attacking the bishop because my bishop attacks that square. He wants to keep pieces on the board because he's losing. When you're losing in chess, you want to keep pieces on the board. When you're winning in chess, trading is usually better for you. So he's kind of forced to trade. And when he trades, yes, we have an opposite colored bishop endgame, but my bishop is hitting the G pawn and the C pawn. So we're about to have an endgame where I am simply up 3 pawns. And in chess, we call that like a 2-result position, meaning the results are going to be I win or I draw at the worst, right? So pretty good when you get those positions in chess. He played c5. I took on g4. And this was game 45. I didn't end up notating all this game. I'll go as far as I can and then just tell you how it ended, because both of us were low on time. We both activated our kings here. I got my bishop out to safety. Treated my bishop to e8. Got my pawn off of a dark square from this bishop. Played f5 here, checking the king, which maybe is a mistake to allow these pawns to get disconnected like this and not work together. But from here, I can just tell you what I did is like I put my bishop on g6. So for now, it's just a tall pawn, keeping everything safe. And then the plan is just to get my king over here, win these pawns, and eventually what's going to happen is this bishop is going to be caught like a soccer goalie in the middle with a shooter shooting at the right end of the goal and the left end of the goal. My goal is after we get, like, let's say we get rid of these 2 pawns and I only have 1 pawn here and 1 pawn here. The plan is you push both of them, and the white bishop can't guard both of them, is basically what ended up happening. So I converted the queen, and we won game 1. Okay, game 2. I'm white now. Again, it's game 45. I'm playing against a high school kid. He's like 16. He was the top-rated player in the quad. He's about 1950. I'd played him once before and was really winning, but allowed him to get a draw when I was low on time and calculation. So a little backstory there. I also played this kid a second time the next day, which we'll show you in the video tomorrow. So I opened c4. This is the English opening. Controls the center with a non-center pawn. e6, hitting back. g3. The bishop goes on the light squares in the English opening, controlling the center. Knight f6, developing a piece. Bishop g2, developing a piece. d5, striking at the center, opening up his light squared bishop, exchanging a non-center pawn for a center pawn. Yeah, this is a slight mistake, but we don't need to play like computers when we're not super GM, so this is a fine move in practice. Captures, knight f3, bishop e7, developing pieces from both of us, allowing us to castle. I castle, he castles. You want to castle early and often in chess. Get your king out of the center. d3. Um, this is kind of like a reverse Sicilian dragon setup here for white. The white pawn is hitting e4. It's a little bit more passive. d4 would have been grabbing more space, but it also would have left behind the square on e4 for the knight to jump into. So now I have options of playing e4 myself sometimes. He played b6, where he wants to fianchetto his bishop here. I knew that was not right. You don't want to be opening this rook to my bishop. B, your bishop can already develop on this diagonal, so you're investing another turn to get going here. Probably not the best, but some people like to fianchetto their bishop, so I understand it. Knight c3, striking at the center, developing a piece. Bishop b7, developing his bishop. Bishop f4, developing a bishop, putting pressure on the c-pawn here. I have ideas like knight b5 hitting it. I have ideas like rook c1 hitting it. He plays bishop d6. And a normal move would be to play queen d2 and just defend that bishop. You take me, I take with the queen. But I played rook c1 because I played quite a bit of games online where it goes bishop takes, pawn takes, and then I get in a move like e3. So I have this like weird doubled pawns, which is usually bad. However, I'm capturing towards the center, and this open g file, I can like put my king on h1, put my rook on g1, and get an attack going like this. It's a little unusual. His bishop may be out of play if I can get that going. So I wanted to try it, and I knew it was unlike the game that we played last time, so I wanted to play something different with him. He captured, very normal. I took back. He played d4, striking at my knight. I had a bit of a long calculation here. Knight b5, I think, is the normal move. It attacks the pawn on d4. It attacks the pawn on c7. I didn't really love how it looked after c5, though, which solves both the problems. Defends the pawn. This is kind of annoying for me now. This bishop is great. This pawn's backwards. Like if I ever play e3, he can capture, and this pawn's really weak. My knight needs to go to a3 back to c4 to get back in the game. I still don't really love how it's looking. So I instead played knight e4, jumping into the center. And if black just tries to, we should get in the habit of counting in chess, 2 attackers, only 1 defender. If black just tries to win a pawn right now, such as this, well, I would just take on d4 with my queen. If we trade and the bishop trades here, we would have this position. My knight is developed, yours is not. My rook is active, yours are not. Yes, I have a double pawn, but my king is going to be able to protect it. I have pawns going in the center. I'm fine here. It's a simple game. Playing a kid who probably doesn't know his end games as much as he is tactically sharp. Pretty standard, right? So I was okay with that trade. Bit of unusual position too. But he after 94, he did take, I took, and then he played c5. So he didn't want to pick this up right away. Obviously I can play e5 here, just defending the pawn. But I went with b4. The idea is if you take me, again, I'm going to take here. And you have these doubled pawns. Yeah, you could get an a5 and maybe try to convert these 3 versus 1, getting a pawn to the end of the board. But I have this center. It looks pretty nice for me. And I'm just trying to strike at your pawn structure here. So b4 was played. He played queen e7, getting his queen off this d file, so like a rook can go there, defending the c pawn this way. I exchanged the b pawn. He took back, and now I have a target. So this is a weakness for me, the c pawn. And here's the thing about these overextended pawns: either they're a weakness, they're a target for me to win, or they are a strength, and they're going to become queens and win material, right? So it's pretty cut or dry. That's the debate going on right now. I played queen c2, which, again, if you take this pawn, which you're attacking twice, I'm only defending it once. Well, no big deal. I would just take your c5 pawn. and you're going to lose your D pawn pretty soon. If you take here, 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 something like this could go on. Again, white's pretty happy with this. So that's not what happened. He developed his knight. Rightfully, black wasted kind of some tempos not developing it, and they're a little bit out of shape here. Now with the knight here, the sole purpose is to defend this pawn right here, but it also has dreams of jumping into f6. So here I thought e5 was a prudent move for a couple of reasons. One, it sets up a trap. B, it stops knight f6. And black played rook ac8, a normal move, but a blunder in the position. It's normal because it defends the pawn. It lines up with my queen. I would have argued that if you're going to move a rook, again, it's a blunder to move a rook here. The f rook to the c8 is probably a little bit better because this a rook wants to come to the open b file. So the question is, do you want your rooks on c and d, or do you want them on b and c? It's close, but anyways, he made a normal move here. And can you spot the tactic I did to not win the game, but just be winning? Give you 5 seconds here. The move was knight g5. This is a double threat. So one, I'm threatening checkmate. That's a problem. Got to deal with that. Two, loose pieces drop off. The b7 bishop is not defended right now, and my bishop discovers an attack on it. So a dual purpose move. Even if I wasn't threatening checkmate, this would be a good move for my knight to jump into this e4 square. It's just a powerful knight in the center of the board. But he plays f5, stopping my queen from seeing here. Of course, we're not going to take on passant because that would allow knight takes f6, defending checkmate, and discovering a defense of the bishop. So instead, we take the free bishop, hitting the rook. The rook goes to b8. We insert the check to d5, which is pretty important. We want this king in the corner for endgames and for checkmate reasons. So the king goes to h8, and now we play rook b1. It says that's a mistake because there's a better move in the position, but I think this is practically a very good move. I'm up a whole piece right now. That's a lot of material. The aim is to trade down and go win this game. I don't need to get my game in, National Geographic of chess. So the rook trades. I think that's a bad move from black. Trading pieces is not something you should be doing when you're losing. And it gives me the open b file for my rook. Here, the knight took on e5. A move that surprised me. The idea is if I take with my pawn, he takes on the knight. Now, this would be winning for white still. And I have a lot of options here. Rook b7 is tempting, invading with my rook. I didn't love what I saw, though, when like queen d8 hits the board, something like that, hitting my bishop. So rook b7 is a tempting move, invading. I ended up settling on the best move in the position, which was knight e6. And I'm still attacking your knight. I'm still attacking your rook. So you got problems. He saved his knight to g6. I took his rook. He took my pawn on f4. He's just trying to make it complicated. He knows he's losing. And I played rook b8 here, lining my rook up with the king, threatening checkmate. For example, knight e6 would be checkmate if it was my turn to move. He played queen g5 here, and I needed to calculate this all before I played rook b8, right? For example, if this bishop wasn't here, king h8 would be checkmate. So I needed to make sure there weren't any checks to worry about. I needed to make sure knight h3 is not a check to worry about. Knight e2 is not a check to worry about. None of these things are checks to worry about because I don't want to give up a perpetual check or a draw in this position. So I simply played king h1. There are no checks. The checks are queen g1. The checks are queen g2, right? So he played queen g2. I took it, and he resigned here, right? Because, he can take here. And again, this is checkmate. So he can't do anything. Okay. So game 3. This is playing the weakest member in the quad. Again, I'm a little rusty to chess, so we'll see how this game goes. If I win this game, I'm 3-0. If I lose it, I'm 2-1. Again, I got white. I open with c4, e5, g3, knight f6 developing a piece, bishop g2, knight c6 developing a piece, knight c3 developing a piece, attacking the center, bishop e7 developing a piece, preparing to castle, knight f3 developing a piece, attacking the center, castles, rook e8, allowing the bishop to retreat to f8, putting the rook in the center of the board, d4, opening up the position, captures, knight takes, bishop c5, an unusual move because I knew this bishop should go back to f8, it's attacking my knight. I took his knight to double up his pawns, a slight win for me. Took with the B pawn, capturing towards the center. Probably taking with the D pawn's a little bit better here, but that's a principled move. Bishop F4, trying to get in at this weakness, developing a piece here. Bishop B7. This bishop is weird. It's defending this pawn, but it's not very good piece right now. It does have hope someday once you get in the move like D5. A3 to allow like B4, and if bishop B6, C5, Noah's Ark, trapping the bishop. Played A5, putting the clamps here, so now I can no longer do this. Played rook C1, lining my rook up with the bishop. Bishop F8, queen D2, protecting the bishop, allowing the rook to come to D1, getting off the back rank. G6, so the bishop can fianchetto, however, weakening the dark squares around his king. Rook F D1, lining the rook up with the queen. D6. And the tactic I kept on wanting to make work here, by the way, guys, is knight B5. You know, like if we go on my move, I wanted to make knight B5 work. So it would go like pawn takes, bishop takes, rook B8, retreat, capture, something like this. But I couldn't quite make it work where I thought it kind of bailed black out. So, you know, no need to rush anything in here. I have the better position. I have the easier position to play. I can chill. And so I played rook FD1. He played D6. Bishop G5, pinning the knight. Bishop G7, defending the knight. Queen F4, putting more pressure on the knight. And D5. And here, the move I had wanted to play the whole time is knight E4. And I thought a long time about knight E4 here. Knight E4 is the best move, but I wasn't sure what to do. Obviously, you can't take the knight. You lose your queen. You can't take with the rook because I just take with my bishop, and then I can retreat my bishop, and you can't take with your knight. You would lose your queen again. So I would just win an exchange that way. If you take here ever, obviously my rook's pinning you. You have tripled isolated pawns. That's awful. So that's the move I wanted to do here. But knight e4, I wasn't sure what to do after knight h5, where the knight discovers an attack on my queen. If I take you, you take me. Now the best move here was queen d2, where you still have to deal with this. My knight, and why knight e4 kept on calling me is this c5 square is just a square that's calling for your knight to get placed on, right? Like chess at advanced level is a game of squares. So the knight here is just a wonderful piece. It's what I wanted to play. I wanted to, after like knight e4, a move like rook e6 to hit the board, defending the knight, and then bam, knight c5 hits the rook, hits the bishop. You save your bishop. I get the exchange. But I just, it'd been a long day, and this is unexcusable. There's two types of losses in chess, and we don't want to make excuses for ourselves, but we want to recognize. Loss one is a loss where we play someone better than ourselves, and they prove that over the chessboard. And that's an okay loss to me, 100%, because you're going to learn from that. You're going to learn a lot from that looking at that game, right? That's a good loss to have. Loss number two is a game where you're totally winning. Your opponent doesn't really do anything, and you just beat yourself. Those losses, frankly, are unacceptable. I think the biggest difference between me going from like 1,300 to around 1,900 was the determination to not beat myself. Anyways, beating myself is exactly what I did in this game. I took on d5. I took with the bishop. I took again. And I knew if I took with the knight, it doesn't quite work because the knight can take. And if I take your queen, you take my queen. And I have problems. I'm just losing there because the knight's going to take on e2 a check, forking my king and rook. If I take you, you're going to take my piece. So what I thought was fine is, and this is just like such a brain fart. Even here, white is fine. They're not like as winning as I was before. I was like +4 in the position. But if the bishop takes, removing the defender of this light squared bishop, the queen would take, the queen would take, the bishop would take, the knight would take. You can take here, but I'm going to take here. And this is a game, you could take here. And this game is fine. Like this game's like pretty drawish. White's going to win sometimes. I had a major time advantage on the clock compared to my opponent. He was the weaker player than me, so I would have been fine doing that. What I ended up doing inexplicably is I took the knight. The knight took back. And then I said, haha, queen d2, a clever move. My bishop still hits your queen. If you move your queen anywhere, I take your knight, getting back the material. Like, this is fine. It's a similar thing. Now, of course, after queen d2, knights can go backwards, right? Pieces are allowed to go backwards, and now I'm just losing. So that's what happened in the game. I will point out, too, that, like, practically, I think it's a mistake simplifying this position because I had a major advantage on the clock, and knight e4 was a hard move, and knight h5 was not an easy move to find, right? So, anyways, is what it is. This is what happened. And here I traded, which I don't want to be trading, but what I calculated is I can play rook c6 here, threatening here. Rook d6 is pretty much forced. I pick up this pawn. And yes, I'm losing. However, I have 6 pawns. He has 4. I'm only down 1 point in material. And if I can, I can draw this a lot of the time, I think. And sometimes win even with these 2 pawns versus this one. So h6 happened. I checked the king. The king came to h7. My bishop moved. He attacked my pawn. I played e3. Probably king f1 was better. He played g5. And I'm trying to move quickly here to keep him in time trouble. Have to put my bishop back on b8. He played knight d7. Rook d8, hitting the knight. He took my bishop to simplify. Makes sense. I traded. He played a4. Makes sense. Trying to target here with his rook eventually and have 1 pawn control 2. I played rook b7, hitting the pawn here, forcing his king to get active. And again, this game was low on time, so I don't have it fully notated. But what I can tell you is he played the endgame very well. I made a mistake. I maybe could have drawn it, and I ended up losing. So a bit disappointing, but the biggest disappointment is I beat myself. However, overall, very happy with my play for as rusty as I am. Haven't played chess for months, really years, seriously. And I played good, right? If I didn't do this inexplicably bad calculation, and I remember I looked at the clock and there was 15 minutes and I panicked for a second, which is just keep your cool. 15 minutes is a lot of time. It's game 45. And so I just panicked, was let's do this, which is no, take your time, calculate the best move. You have a major time advantage. Your position is way better. Black just does, it's hard for Black to play. So I made it way too easy on him, is what it is. But happy with my overall play. Not going to be playing a ton of chess going forward because I am going to Vegas for the World Series of Poker, but happy to get these games. And in the next video, I'll break down my Sunday Swiss and why the police were called in the game. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and have a great day, guys. Peace.